Hello, beautiful manifestors. It is Olivia Grace, and I'm back with another video for you guys. And finally, I am making this video that I've been wanting to make for so long. And I'm really comparing Neville and Abraham Hicks, because these are, a lot of people, when they get into manifestation, start with Abraham Hicks. I did. And Abraham Hicks is more law of attraction. And, but I feel like Abraham Hicks is not, she's not so much, like, she teaches the law of attraction, but she's not the one, like, I feel like in Abraham Hicks, she talks about states of being, basically. She doesn't call it that, but she's not really the person that focuses on techniques and, drinking water cups and writing on bay leaves and burning it. And she's not focusing on that. She really is focusing on really your emotional state, your vibrational state. And then, of course, we know Neville, who teaches the law of assumption, about assuming your desire and everything. So I really wanted to just talk about, I wanted to kind of compare, because I feel like in the law of assumption community, there's kind of a lot of hate towards, like, the law of attraction community. And I will say right off the bat that I feel like law of assumption is much more advanced than law of attraction. But I do believe that law of attraction has its part, or like its place in why it is what it is. Really, I feel like it's a stepping stone. If you think about going from being completely unaware that you're creating anything in reality, completely unaware of your power, for a lot of people, going into Neville is too big of a pill to swallow. Going into, I'm creating every single thing and every single body and every single, I'm in control of every single, like, it's, I am God manifested. Like, it's like too much for some people to go from absolutely being powerless to absolutely all of the power. So I feel like the law of attraction is kind of it's like a little bridge for people to kind of dip your toes into, understanding that you are affecting what goes on outside of you. So I just want to give credit to that and give credit to Abraham Hicks, because even when I found Neville, I was kind of like, why isn't Abraham Hicks teaching this? Because this is obviously more helpful when it comes to getting specific things. But I do feel like it's something, like, some people need that bridge. Some people need that little stepping stone to kind of dip their toes in understanding that basically life is more than what it appears to be, and that you are more than what you appear to be. And I think Abraham Hicks does a really good job of letting people know that. But before I continue, I have coaching links in the description. I create custom revision scenes, custom stat scenes. It's all in the description. And yeah, so let's really get into it. I have notes too, you guys, and this is going to be long, just so you know, because there was a lot of things, like, as I thought about it, I was like, there's a lot of things, like, to kind of compare and contrast. But so first, I want to talk about the vortex, which is what Abraham Hicks talks about. She talks about raising your vibration. And, well, let me, like, kind of briefly, like, introduce both of them. So Abraham Hicks is actually Esther Hicks, and she's channeling, and I want to say it's not really an entity, but it's a group of consciousness, basically. A group. It's not really one stream of consciousness. A group of a stream of consciousness that she's channeling. And she talks about her basic way of teaching is the basic law of attraction way: ask, believe, receive. Ask and it is given. But she specifically focuses on raising your vibration, and raising your vibration to the level of your vortex, which is the place of all of your manifestations. That your basically your feeling state is what manifests things. She also focuses on that we are naturally high vibrational beings, which, if we know who we are at the core, what we are at the core, which is consciousness manifested, then we are naturally high vibrational beings. And she talks about like basically holding your cork down, which is with, you know, kind of negative energy or negative limiting beliefs and things like that. Now, Neville, which most of you guys know if you're on this channel, because I talk mostly about law of assumption nowadays. Before, obviously, I spoke more law of attraction before I was into law of assumption. But Neville talks more about your imagination being the all, your imagination being the, how do you say, like, just your imagination just being the creative field. Anything that you can imagine, you can bring into your life, and that absolutely nothing is outside of you, which I think is a really big difference between the two teachers. Is, you know, Abraham Hicks, law of attraction, is about things coming to you, and Neville Goddard, law of assumption, is about things emanating from you. And so, but there are some similarities though, and I want to kind of talk and just compare and contrast. This is really just discussion. I really honestly have immense respect for both of these teachers because Abraham Hicks changed my life. That is the teacher that changed, you know, everything for me. And as I said, I feel like that can be a good stepping stone for people who can't quite grasp or swallow everything that Neville is saying. Because I remember even when I first got introduced to Abraham Hicks, I couldn't even grasp what she was saying. I remember literally I remember exactly where I was. I was at school and I was in my dorm, or not in the dorm. I was in like the hallway, like doing my homework. And I was just trying to listen in the background to what she was saying. And I would just look down and the video would be over and I'd have to restart it because I didn't catch anything she was saying. So, and I had heard of Neville Goddard many times as I was studying Abraham Hicks, but anytime I would read anything by Neville, it went over my head. It was too complicated for me to understand. Now, I will say though, now Neville Goddard has been much more simplified. The law of assumption is much more simplified now with all these new teachers. I still highly suggest that if you're into the law of assumption to read Neville because he's the one who made this popular. He's the one who really kind of started this. And that way you can kind of make your own conclusions. But I know Neville can be hard to understand, you know, for some people. But so first, let's talk about the vortex. And it's so interesting because for a while, I stopped listening to Abraham Hicks. But sometimes if I want like a boost, just even listening to her speak is enough to kind of make you feel better and feel in a good mood. But she talks about the vortex, right? And what I realized with the vortex is that the vortex is a state. It's a state of being. Because every time she would talk about the vortex, I'd be like, you know, you can't picture that. It's like, oh, you know, you raise your vibration and you're going to get to this vortex of creation. And, you know, everything that you want is there in this vortex. And I believe, this is my interpretation, I believe that the vortex it's a state of being. It's really the state of having all of your desires. And it's that state of being, like her way of getting into that state is by being really excited, being really, you know, happy, being, you know, really grateful, all of these more high vibrational feelings. And people like to say like, you know, well, everything in the law of attraction is bullshit. There's no such thing as vibration. And that's just not true, you guys. Vibration it's scientific. It's also like at the base of us, everything is vibrating. Okay. So it is. And you can even tell if you get next to, you know, a Buddhist monk, or I remember when I first got into energy work and I was near like a group of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I don't, you know, really like religion that much, but I don't dislike it, but it's not for me. But I could feel their energy. Their energy was extremely high. And you compare that to maybe getting around, you know, maybe a criminal or somebody who's, you know, trying to harm people or hurts people, or that's somebody even that's really depressed. And you realize you leave them, you feel drained, you might feel depressed, you might feel these things. It's a difference in the vibrational frequency of that. So Abraham Hicks talks about raising your vibration into this vortex, right? Neville talks about entering states. Now, when okay, before I get into that, something that Abraham Hicks says that is super true. And I think this is something that actually kind of gives this is, in my opinion, the biggest pro on the side of the law of attraction versus the side of the law of assumption. And something she always says is that every desire that you have is because you believe you'll be happier in having that desire. This is true, you guys, fundamentally. And I want to pause right here and say something that kind of annoys me a little bit about the law of assumption community, is that everybody, they kind of bash like happiness. It's like, you don't have to be happy to manifest your desires, and I don't want to be happy all the time, and I, whatever, all this stuff. And it's like, I get that, and I get how feeling like you can't feel any other emotions other than happiness and excitement and whatever in order to manifest, that can be really difficult, because we are people, we're humans, we're not happy all the time, we're not feeling ecstatic all the time, and that doesn't mean that we can't manifest our desires, right? So, but what I will say though is following the feeling of happiness is always, it's just going to make your life better, the quality of your life. When I teach you guys, when I'm teaching you guys here, when I'm coaching my clients, I am coaching you to get your desire, but I'm also caring about your well-being, okay? Because that is everything that you're looking for is connected to, you feel like you'll be happier with it, you'll feel like you'll be better off, you'll be better. So when you go automatically, even if you think about it from the viewpoint of the law of assumption, if you go to happiness, if that is your aim, to find happiness every day, and that is your state that you're in, is a state of happiness, then your state is what's reflecting back to you. So you're going to create things into your life that make you happy, okay? And what's interesting too is, I want to just pause like where I'm at right now and just say, everybody likes to say, well, law of attraction doesn't work, and this doesn't work. And it was so interesting because I was on Abraham Hicks Reddit, and someone was asking this exact question, who do you, have you guys ever, listened to Neville Goddard, or who do you like better, Abraham or Neville Goddard? The entire comments said Abraham, and they said that they had tried Neville Goddard's techniques, and it hadn't worked for them. And I was honestly surprised, because I think the benefit of being happy and, you're kind of being in a general state of happiness and bringing generally happy things to you makes sense. But I think that when you want to really get specific on a desire and really expand beyond what's possible, it's more than just being happy, right? It's more than just being happy. It doesn't matter how happy you are. If you believe at the end of the day that you're broke as fuck, that's what's going to be reflected, period. So you have to be able to also, while tending to your vibration, you also have to be able to recognize the limiting beliefs that you have, or the limiting assumptions that you have. And so that's why I feel like most people that I've seen don't get specific results, or when it comes to bigger desires, it's difficult for them to do it simply with law of attraction, because a lot of the bigger desires that we are manifesting require an identity shift. And Abraham Hicks doesn't talk about your identity at all, really. It's more about feeling better, which, to be honest, I just don't think is a negative thing. I also kind of hate the term toxic positivity. I feel like in the world that is as I don't believe that the world is just negative. I think that the world, it's the Matrix, like they say. I hate to say that word, but it's meant to show you the negative parts. There's so many beautiful things in the world, but you're not going to see those things on TV. You're not going to see those things being broadcast on the news. You're only going to see the horrors and the horrible things that go on in the world. So it's meant to kind of keep you in a negative state, with all of the depression, with all of the anxiety, with all of the mental illness, with all of the, just hatred that is broadcast into the world all day, every day. I just don't see how any amount of positivity can be toxic. I just can't see that. Now, what I will say is that you shouldn't repress how you feel. And I think that's where the problem can come in with Abraham Hicks' teaching of just be happy all the time and just bop around and just because you're not always feeling like that. And sometimes you need to be able to cry it out. Sometimes you need to be able to, get angry. Sometimes you're not feeling whatever. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to get your desire just because you're having a bad day or a bad week or a bad month. It really doesn't. So I think that's the disconnect. But I just don't subscribe to that, toxic positivity. And, I personally, guys, I do want to be happy. I won't say all the time, but most of the time I want to be happy. I don't want to be mad or angry or sad, and if other people want to experience that, I feel like there's plenty of that to go around. So, whatever. But when I'm teaching you guys this channel, I want you guys to be happy. I don't want you to just get the things, you guys, because as Abraham says, everything that you're wanting is because you're looking for an improvement in your emotional state, in your state of being, and so I want you to feel that, because the thing about not feeling that is that you can perpetually just be manifesting and manifesting and manifesting, trying to fill this hole of whatever it is that you're not feeling happy about, and not ever really getting to the point of being happy, right? Even Neville talks about this with the one woman that I believe this is the woman that manifested, she was like an older woman. She didn't have a job, she didn't have a car, she was about to get kicked out of her house, and she was asking Neville, how do I manifest all of these things? I need so much. I don't have just one desire, I have all of these desires and I need them. And he said, instead of, when you're trying to manifest multiple things at once, go to just being ecstatic. That was his words. Go to being ecstatic. And this is where the "isn't it wonderful" comes from. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful? You're just dwelling in the state of it being wonderful, of being in ecstasy, of being extremely happy and blissful. This woman did that, and she manifested a guy from her past, or somebody, it was some distant relative or distant friend that she used to have or something, decided he was going to pay for everything she needed for the rest of her life, literally. So it does work. And it does work for, some people. And that's the other thing that I wanted to say, is that so many people say, well, this doesn't work, it doesn't work. But different things, I feel like I say this in every video, because I feel like everybody is so, I don't know, people act as if that their experience is the only experience that there is, and there's no one can have a different experience. If this never worked for me, it's not going to work for anybody, and that's just not true, because it does work for some people. So that's the second thing. So now the positives of being positive is in, by manifesting, by being positive and positive thinking, is that, as I said, you're going, really, happiness is your true end. It is your true end. Every single thing that you're wanting at the base of it is for you to be happy. I will also say that in the law of a law of attraction company, the law of attraction community, and the law and Abraham Hicks community, I will say, is just a much more, honestly, friendlier community. I just feel like the law of assumption has a tendency to have big egos and to be kind of condescending. And this is just my opinion, and it's obviously not everyone, because I feel like I have the best people on my channel. I have the most beautiful subscribers and people that comment. I always have the kindest people, but just as me, when I'm kind of in, a forum or reading, Reddit, or, even looking at the YouTube videos, and the teachers of law of attraction, and the teachers that are in, that teach Abraham Hicks, or, whatever, the people that follow that community is much more just connected to love and well-being and happiness and high vibrations and all of that stuff. So they're just much more kind. I don't see, if you post a question in that community, it's pretty rare that somebody's going to come jump down your throat and, like just kind of be condescending to you. Whereas in the law of assumption community, that's the one thing I don't like, is that people, like I said, it's very egoic. It's very, my way is right. Everybody else is dumb and stupid and, all of this stuff. And it's just, it's catty. It's like, you ask a question and yeah, this is the reason, it's not a lot. And that's not all the time, because there's definitely been people in the law of assumption community that are, very kind and very helpful. But that for me was definitely new, coming into what I think or thought was a spiritual community, and seeing so many people so quick to just kind of condescend and bring other people down, which that doesn't really make sense to me. But that's something that I've noticed. Now, the negatives of law of attraction is, number one, obviously, we talked about the emotion thing. We're not always going to feel happy. And if you're feeling like your manifestation is hinging on you feeling happy and feeling good, that can be a lot of pressure on you. And that can be like, it can cause you to suppress your emotions, which they come to the surface at some point anyway. It can cause you to kind of live like inauthentically, because you may not be feeling this, but you're afraid to be authentic with how you're feeling. And I feel like being authentic with how you're feeling is the way that really shows you who you're being, what your assumptions are, what your beliefs are, right? So that, I feel like, is the kind of downside. And also, obviously, the biggest downside to me of the law of attraction is it is extremely limited. It's, I didn't even think that you could manifest for other people when I was in law of attraction, because that's something that they say that you can't do. You can't affect anybody, or, do anything for anybody. And then when you get into law of assumption, of course, you realize that you are and can and do affect everybody as well. So, and I mean, for me, I've just been using that to just uplift others, to see positive change in people's lives, and it works very well. So that was one of the biggest shifts for me in coming from law of attraction to law of assumption, that, wow, I can affect other people's lives positively. Sure, you can do that negatively as well. I saw someone ask that, which is, again, like, that's what I mean. Like, it's very weird. Like, it's not weird, but I feel like in the law of assumption, there's almost like compassion is kind of missing. There's no, because, they hate so much, like, oh, high vibrations and stuff, and they hate happy people. I don't know. So it's like, they like look down on those things, but there is a sort of like compassion and love that is amongst the community as a whole in law of attraction. But it is much more limited. I will say that it's much, much more limited. And I feel like when it comes, like I said earlier, when it comes to manifesting big changes in your life that require a little bit more of an identity shift, like law of attraction is not really going to do that for you. And I think that's why most people don't get big results using the law of attraction. Now with the law of assumption, obviously it's much more, it's completely unlimited, which was one of my favorite things about learning about the law of assumption, is that there are absolutely no limits. I think also too, the law of attraction focuses a lot, on techniques, and it can kind of put you in the mind, like the way that it's taught is like, this technique is manifesting this thing. So you doing this technique is what's manifesting this thing. Whereas law of assumption is more like, you're doing this technique to create a change in your imagination, a change in who you're being, a change in your state, and that's going to be reflected out. Even feeling like, the universe has to deliver something to you. That can be pretty problematic, because if it's something outside of you that basically has to decide, and this goes into a whole bunch of stuff in the law of attraction, tarot cards and, like the planets, the alignment of the planets, and, all of these things are such, like, there's just all of these little things that could be not, oh, it's not time for your manifestation, or, oh, you have to wait, or, oh, you're not ready, or, oh, all of these things, right? And I'm not shading any of those things, because I feel like again, it's just reflecting who you're being. It's reflecting where you are. That's all a tarot reading is really doing. It's reflecting where currently your state is. So there's that. But with all of these outside factors that basically can determine for you whether you're going to have your manifestation or not, that leaves a lot of room for failure. You know, there's a lot of room for, oh, Mercury's in retrograde for the next 3 months, so I'm not going to get my desire in this time. Or, you know, oh, you know, my tarot reading said I have another 5 years before I meet my soulmate, so I'm not going to meet them. You know, and that it's just kind of, again, putting the power outside of you. Oh, the universe has to deliver it for me, so I guess it's just not my time. Like, whereas we know that everything in the law of assumption, we know that everything is coming from within us. So there's no deciding factor outside of us on when or where or how we can get what we want, right? It's just, it doesn't matter. Like, that was another really liberating thing for me, is it doesn't matter about planets or tarot or anything. It only matters what you're believing and what you're feeling and what you're thinking, you know? So, that's that. Okay, so another thing with Abraham Hicks. So she talks about sifting through contrast, and like her way of manifesting is sifting through contrast and connecting with your inner being through vibration and vibrational like energy work, and that equals your manifestation. So sifting through contrast, like basically you know, I don't know, date a fuckboy. When dating that fuckboy and you guys break up, you have all these, what she calls rockets of desires, right? Which is the things that you want in your next relationship, or the things that you want in your next manifestation, which this is kind of how creation works, you guys. And I feel like having this view has made it kind of easier for me to choose, because you can look at the things like instead of looking at the things that are, you know, that are in your life that you don't like and feeling discouraged by them, they're just giving you kind of feedback of what you've been creating, but it's also giving you clarity on what you should be creating next. So for instance, let's see, like my first boyfriend that I had he was very like nonchalant and not very loving. So then I wanted a more, you know, emotional type guy. And then I dated a guy, but he was too emotional. He was like a crybaby and like crazy, you know? And so then I was like, oh, well, I want somebody that's not, you know, not emotional. And then I manifested a narcissist. And finally, I manifested, you know, a good mixture of balanced, you know, emotions and not too emotional, right? But everything kind of me dating this person led me to understand, ooh, that's not quite what I want. Let me try this. Okay, that's not quite what I want. Let me try this. And that kind of like when you're moving through your life and that you're sifting through what Abraham Hicks calls contrast, or which is basically unfavorable things that are happening, and you're using that instead of to make you upset, but to choose again, to choose what you want from that. And connecting with your inner being, which he calls connecting with your inner being or raising your vibration. And doing these things is what she feels like that's like her formula for a manifestation. Now, Neville is, I'm going to look at my notes, assuming yourself to be something and persisting. That is basically the basics of Neville's teachings. You make the assumption that you already are something, and you persist that you already are that, and that equals your manifestation. So those two are very different than, you know, trying to raise your vibration, trying to do this and trying to do that, and all of these things, rather than just assuming that I'm it now. And I feel like this is another reason why people in law of assumption don't get bigger results, because again, this is kind of like what I was talking about in my worthiness video, which I don't know which of these I'm going to post first, but when you're in a state basically of even trying, or, you know, trying to be more high vibrational, or trying to get to this, or, you know, see, like, as long as it's outside of you, it's just way more difficult than you just assuming to be the person that already is the one that has their desire, and then persisting in that. And we all know, you know, that works better as far as getting specific things that you want. So I feel like with the law of attraction, I feel like it creates a overall fulfillment. That's something that I'll say for myself. And one of my subscribers also commented and said the same thing before I even made this video, which was that, to be honest, when I was focusing just on law of attraction, I was focusing on my energy and my vibration. I was happier. I'm still happy now, but I was just kind of always in like a blissed out kind of mode. You know, I was very blissful. I was very grateful. I was very peaceful. I just had like my state of being was much more, I feel like, stabilized and very high and very high vibrational. So I feel like overall, when you're focusing obviously on being happier, on raising your state of being, you're going to feel more fulfilled generally in your life. Whereas with law of assumption, especially when you're realizing that everything is in your control, everything you can, you know, choose and pick how you want it to go, it can make you kind of micromanage your life. You're trying to make sure every single detail is like exactly the way that you want it. And that's fine, but it can be overwhelming sometimes, you know, and that's just my opinion. You know, maybe it's not for some people, but it can be a lot trying to, you know, fix every single thing in your life rather than just kind of dwelling in the state of, you know, perfection, of happiness, of bliss. So that's one thing that I notice as well. But I do feel like, you know, so I feel like those two are it's the opposite. Like with law of attraction, you have an overall sense of fulfillment, but when it comes to manifesting specific things, that's where law of attraction kind of fails. And I think with law of assumption, you know, you obviously can manifest very specific things, but I think the overall just feeling of fulfillment is missing. And obviously, you guys, because I know somebody's gonna comment, yes, you can use the law of assumption to create an overall sense of fulfillment, but just in the law of assumption community, and even in Neville's teachings, it's not really the focus. The focus is not overall fulfillment. It's getting specific things that you want, which is fine. But after going after so many specifics, at some point you do want to just feel happier, because that's what you're doing all of that for anyway. So that's actually really it, you guys. I mean, I really touched on everything. You know, I think the last thing is about your desire, and kind of the view of your desire. And the law of assumption, or law of attraction, is, like I said, or Abraham Hicks, is your desire. Because the thing is that Abraham Hicks does kind of talk about things that Neville talks about. She just uses different language, but she does talk about how your desires are already existing. You know, Abraham Hicks focuses a lot on your attention, which I think is something that a lot of people could benefit from. I feel like it's helped me, because your attention, what you give attention to, is what builds your assumptions. That's what builds your beliefs. So like, for instance, if you're manifesting an SP, or you're manifesting a change in SP, but all you watch is stuff about, you know, niggas ain't shit, and, you know, people fighting and cheating on each other and doing stuff, you're giving attention to that. You're reinforcing beliefs of negativity in relationships. And so you're going to continue to experience that, you know, and that's something that is not like, it's more like you're more taught to obviously take the time to direct your focus in those times when you are consciously, you know, doing your satsine or doing your affirmations. But I think that it's beneficial to know, like, to just basically be mindful of the things that you give your attention to, if it's not what you want to continue to experience in your world and in your life. But your desire is, it's like it's coming to you. And Abraham Hicks talks about, like, it's already in existence. So she does talk about creation is finished. This is the way that Neville puts it. But I think the way that Neville puts it is a little better, that creation is finished and you can occupy it now, regardless of how you're feeling, regardless of, you know, what your vibration is or whatever. You can just occupy it with your consciousness, which I think, like I said, is the more accurate way of being able to really being able to have a quick result in something. I feel like we can spend so much time wanting to be something different, or trying to be something different, or waiting, which is a lot. Also, what Abraham Hicks talks about is waiting, being patient. It takes time. There's a gestational period. There's a lot of that. Whereas Neville talks about, it's finished, it's done right now. You're here now. Bringing your desire from the future into the now is really paramount and really makes a difference in the speed of how things actually show up in your life. So that's really it. I feel like I'm hearing my voice in my ears so much. But yeah, that's really it. So that's my compare, contrast. I hope I didn't really forget anything, but this is just my opinion. All in all, you guys, I think that it's good to use things from both. Obviously, I teach law of assumption because as a manifestation coach, what I'm teaching you guys is how to get what you want, but I do, because I'm a coach that also cares about not only getting what you want, but you being happy and the quality of your life. I think that it's important as well to give some attention to that, and to, to be mindful of your energy, to be mindful of, your vibration and who you're vibing with and all of that stuff. So that's just my opinion, you guys. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I intend that this is helpful in some way or gives some insights. I'd love to hear what you guys think, and, what differences you see in Abraham Hicks' way of teaching and Neville Goddard's way of teaching. But I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.